Oh my goodness, MSTY and ULTY took a big hit this week after the X date. Let's take a look at that, and then we'll take a look at the overall market just to see if there happens to be some similarities there. Hello my friends, this is Legend. So we're going to take a look at MSTY and ULTY because man, oh man, did they drop on the X date, didn't they? Now we were expecting that drop, of course, because of the X date, and they did pay out their distributions today. But on the X date, that amount of the distribution does come out of the price of the stock. So that we were expecting for MSTY to drop just a little over $1, and then ULTY to drop just a little over 9 cents, right? But man, did they drop on the X date. And let's just take a look so I can show you what I'm talking about. But before we go to the chart, if you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. It does help the channel. Okay, so here we are on the charts, and we're looking at ULTY first here. And we are looking at the actual movements of those candles. As you can see, I do have the actual chart turned on. And here is that X date. Right here is the distribution X date. And this is on Thursday, right? And you can see this was the Wednesday close right here at 562. And then on Thursday, the open was at 545. So that is 5.62 minus 5.45. And that's a 17 cents drop on the X date. Now we did get paid out that 9 cents, right? As you can see right here for the share price, that 9 cents, but it ended up dropping 17 cents, right? So not only did the 9 cents come out of the price, but another 8 cents also came out of that price. And it didn't stop there, right? It ended up going as low as 540. But ended up coming back up and closing at that 544. But that's definitely a whole lot more than that 9 cents, right? So it did take a pretty good hit on the X date. And then today we had another red day. It actually opened higher than the close of yesterday. It actually opened today at 547, but ended up coming down and closing at that 543. So overall, a red day. And pretty much a red week, right? And let's flip it over to the adjusted chart and let's check out the indicators. All right, so here we are on the adjusted chart. Now for the adjusted chart, it takes out the noise of that distribution. But you can see it still had the drop. And that's because of what we just looked at. It dropped a total of 17 cents. So on the adjusted chart, it does take out that noise of the distribution of 9 cents, but you still had an overall drop, and that's the reason why you see on the adjusted chart, you see that gap down, right? But we are coming close to the midpoint of that Bollinger Band. The momentum here is dying down quick, isn't it? We are just about to get that cross down. We've got a little sliver of green, but we'll see if this can bounce off of that. But that's a pretty sharp turn that we might be coming back down to the bottom area of that Bollinger Band, testing some of this area down through here at around this 524. And of course, if it does that, I still have my buy of 25 shares here at 530. It looks like the RSI 2 is under the 10, but we're not quite at the bottom of that Bollinger Band, right? I prefer at least to be on the bottom half of that Bollinger Band. And if we're getting this cross down, that could mean that price is going to come on down, pick me up at that 530, which will put it on the bottom half of this Bollinger Band, and probably the RSI 2 will still be under 10 at that point. So if it does that and I'm able to pick up 25 more shares at 530, I'd feel pretty good about that. I currently still have the 150 shares at 566 as my average. Now let's take a look at MSTY and let's see where it's setting. All right, so here we are on MSTY. And you can see I've still got my resistance line there drawn, and I've got my support line. And as you can see, if I zoom in on these candles, it looks like this candle might have opened and closed just above this 1582, as the low of that day was 1585, okay? But you can have false breakouts. It's not always guaranteed that if you get a candle that opens and closes above your resistance line, that does not guarantee you a move to the upside. You can have false breakouts, and this would be considered a false breakout because the candle did live above that line, but then the next day we did enter that comfy zone once again. As you can see, that wick does break that 1582 line. So that put us right back into the comfy zone here. As you can see, it's just come right on back down. So when Thursday hit, you had that drop in MSTY right here. We took out the distribution out of that price and it did drop it, but you can see it just kept on going, right? So we did make a new low of 1283. Whew, ouch. 1283 for the new low, and that was made on Thursday. And today we did have a little bit of an up day, right? But we've got a lot of ground to cover on this one. We are back down to around $13.51 for the close of Friday. Let's switch it over to the adjusted chart and let's take a look at the indicators. All right, so here we are on the adjusted chart, and you can see on MSTY, we were getting squeezed right here on the candles with that Bollinger Band right here, but man, did it break out of it, right? It just broke down on it. So it went all the way down to that 1283, and we have moved back up a little bit to touch a little bit of that Bollinger Band. But we've still got a lot of ground to cover to get back up into this area. Our momentum here is dropping, right? We are now on the negative side of that momentum. We did get that crossover because of the distribution along with just the red day. So definitely not a pretty week for MSTY. But let's take a look at Mr. Because if MSTY is down, we know it's down because Mr. came down. And here we are on Mr. and you can see there's that red candle, right? There's that same drop. We are showing some negative momentum. We did get that crossover on that signal line. So Mr. itself is dropping on down, right? I did pick up a few more shares on Thursday because now you can see I am up to 22 shares at an average of $341.74. Now I'm still down a good bit, right? Because the price of Mr. is $309.06. So I am currently down, but that's okay. I'm just seeing this as a buying opportunity for myself. And I do have another purchase out there at $295, and I put this one out there today because had I put it out there Wednesday going into Thursday with that $292 low, it definitely would have picked up that $295, right? But this was not available until today, as I was looking to hopefully pick it up when it was coming down, since it did get as low as $297.71. But you'll see in a minute, not only Bitcoin dropped, as we're looking at right here, but also the overall market, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. But you can see here on Bitcoin, we had that big drop again here. Same situation, right? This thing dropped from a high of 112 to as low as 108.7. So Bitcoin was having a rough day itself. Now it's had pretty much a rough week, right? It has been coming down. The momentum is increasing on that negative side. We did get a crossover on that signal line on Bitcoin, and it has been coming down and separating. So the momentum is increasing on that downside. That does not mean that it's going to continually to move down, as we are sitting on a support line right here at around this 109 area, and then we have another one at around 108. So hopefully we can use those as supports, get this down momentum stopped, and get this thing turned around. That's what I'd like to see. But as I said, not only Bitcoin was down, but the overall market was too. And let's take a look at SPY, as that uses the S&P 500, and it's a very popular ETF. And here we are on SPY. And you can see on SPY, we had a drop that same Thursday. Now it is showing a green candle, right? It's not red, it's green. But look where it was. It closed on Wednesday at 661.10, but then opened on Thursday at 657.94. Ouch, right? And super ouch, because I had that put that I sold at 664, right? I sold that put over here, and then it started coming down. I was looking for it to hopefully bottom out and then start moving up so I can sell my call. But that Thursday, boom, we had that big fall, right? It went as low as 654.41. Now, when I'm sitting at 664, you start thinking, oh boy, I might be holding this one a while, right? And your mind almost wants to start trying to worry about it, right? But what makes me stop the worrying? And that is to look at the overall picture of SPY, the full history of it, right? Because that is what is going to help me be able to be patient and calm. And if I look at that 5-year chart right here, you can see there's that 200 MA, that's that red line. And this stock just stays right above it. And you can see that 200 MA is just going up and to the right, right? So it is moving up. And you can see even that 50-day moving average, it is staying somewhat above it, right? Now we did drop down to where we did get close to the 200 right here, but then popped off, right? And you can see it did move on back up. Now, could we be coming down again? We could, right? We could. And I would be sitting still at this 664. Now it says 663.50, right? And if you remember, my put was at 664. Well, it shows it at 663.50 because I did earn 50 cents per share for selling that put. And of course, 50 cents times 100 shares is $50 that I made, right? But that 50 cents does come off of the price. But I am still looking to sell a call above that 664. Any price above that is a price appreciation on the sell of that position. But if we zoom in here, you can see way down here is that 200 MA. Now, I don't necessarily want it to come all the way back down here and test this, right? But if it does, I still have the overall picture to go back to look at, and that is this 200 MA on the 5-year chart, where it's just beautifully staying right above it. And even if I look at the 1-year chart, you can see for the most part, it does stay above it. We did have that drop during this time period right here, but even if I was in a position and say I got caught right here and I had to buy those shares at about right here at this price of 570 area, and it dropped all the way down to 479, yes, I would be holding those shares and waiting, right? I would be sitting right there waiting and just riding that wave down. But what's the difference? Again, the big picture. As you can see, it did eventually come right back up. Now, of course, that time period is April the 7th all the way to about May the 13th area. So about a month, I would have had to hold those shares off of that big drop here. And if I did get in, say right here, that's 326. So a total of possibly a month and a half, I would have had to hold those shares, right? But even holding them, I would not have been worried because I'm looking at the big picture. I could have actually bought more shares, individual shares, while it's down, right? Why not? Especially if I believe in the history of it. And I do believe in the history of SPY. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, but all we do have is the history. And when you look at the history of a 1-year chart or a 5-year chart, it is just beautiful. So that helps to take a little bit of worry whenever my mind wants to start reeling. I can step back, pull up this chart, and it just changes your mindset automatically, and I no longer worry, right? We could come down. I could be holding this for a while. Nothing is guaranteed to move back up. But the overall history of it tells me that it's got a very good chance of it getting back up above that 200 MA and above the price at which I purchased my shares at. Because even though we were hitting highs, you got to understand, when we were over here, we were hitting highs here too at 451, right? And when we were over here, we were hitting highs at 258. So just because we're hitting all-time highs does not mean anything, right? Because each time it hits that and then it breaks it, well, that's now the new all-time high. And you're going to wish you would have bought it back here, right? So you got to understand that just because it is at the all-time highs doesn't really mean that you shouldn't necessarily buy it, right? Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that about every stock, but I would definitely lean toward that more with SPY. So I currently still have my 100 shares, and I'm waiting and being patient for SPY to move on back up, and then I'll be able to sell my call, right? You can see even that MA5 here, it is still going up and to the right. Even though it did drop, it is still staying above that. It did drop over here right below it, but then jump back up. Now that doesn't mean much, right? But again, this is even moving up and to the right here lately. So I still have a lot of faith in it and hoping that next week I'll be able to sell my call definitely above the 664. At least that is my plan. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, Legend out.